Hello, spooky friends, and welcome to another episode of the Scariest Podcast.
Woo!
This is Robin Grace, and that's Adam Diaz.
Hello.
And we're here to talk about some cool topics.
Indeed. I can tell you hate me so much every time I woo at the beginning of the episode, because I can just hear it in your voice man, I'd wish you'd shut the hell up.
It made me forget what I was going to say.
I guess that explains.
So we are a podcast that talks about interesting, creepy / true crime, paranormal things.
Indeed we are. And I'm super excited because I'm covering something slightly famous this week. I'm going to be covering the Curse of King Tut's Tomb. Robin, what are you going to be covering?
I'm going to be covering what is called The Cage and Ursula Kemp.
I don't know what those things are, so I'm
I
excited.
didn't know what they were either until I researched this stuff. So cool.
Good stuff. So I'm super excited for that. And for those of you who listen to our podcast who have stories of your own, whether it's paranormal or true crime or spiritual or spooky or creepy or coincidental or just funny, you can reach out to us with those. You can reach out to us and we'd be happy to read your stories. If you would like them shared, just email storytime@scarish.com. Go to our website, scarish.com, and click on contact us or message us on any of our social medias. We have an Instagram, it's @scarishpodcast. Twitter's @scarishpod, and Facebook is facebook.com/scarish. We have separate episodes for those called Storytime, where we read the stories that have been sent to us. So I think some people forget that we have those. Not really. The numbers on those are very good, but we don't remind people too much on these episodes to send us their stories, because I think people associate the topic episodes where it's like, well, I don't have a story about King Tut, so I can't send it. Nah, dog, just send that shit. We want to hear what you have to say. So
can't wait to hear about his tutas.
I hate you. So she was making this joke the entire time. I was researching it. I was like, someone do King Tut. She's like, I hear he had some nice tutas. And I was like, I'm pretty sure around that same time was Nefertiti, who had some sweet ass titties. So it's just been titty jokes about Egyptian pharaohs all night long in this house. But I believe you're going to go first this episode. Am I correct?
Yep.
Yep. All right. Well, then take it away.
Oh, okay. All right. So my topic is about the Cage and Ursula Kemp. I had to kind of do a little mixture of it because the Cage is a place that is in St. Osyth, Essex, I think it said. Anyway, it's in England. And at this place is where they kept witches and things like that. And Ursula Kemp was one of them that was kept there. That I guess is kind of famously
was she Kemp there?
Yeah.
That's my Robin pun for the show.
Yes. So I had to kind of cover them together. From the name, The Cage, I imagined just that. I thought it was going to be a cage. You know what I mean? Like some jail cell or some weird...
I thought it was a nickname for a prison, like The Rock.
Oh, that would have been cool.
Is that what it is, or am I wrong?
It is a prison.
Yes, I nailed it.
But it's from the medieval times, so not the cool one.
Welcome to medieval times.
Yeah, not that cool one. But it does date back to the medieval times when they would keep accused witches there until they were to be tried.
Right on. So it was like a holding cell for witches.
Yeah.
They were getting ready to be, let's be real, not just tried, but straight up executed, because that's just kind of what they did to anyone who was accused of being a witch.
Yeah.
Wasn't the punishment all right, we're going to do something that'll kill you if you're human, but if you're a witch, you'll survive?
Well, it's okay, so is this a catch-22?
That is a catch-22.
Okay, so where it's we're going to drown you. If you float, you're a witch.
Right.
If you drown and die... Hey, you died, but you aren't a witch.
Why wasn't there ever punishment? I understand that it was just times when people were crazy, but it's there should have been. It's like when you play a game and you keep calling someone out on cheating. If you keep doing that, there should be a penalty if you're wrong. You know what I mean?
Right.
So if you're calling someone a witch and it turns out they're not a witch and you just murdered someone, that person, I don't know, should be executed summarily. Hey, you were wrong and we just killed an innocent person. I think we're going to cut your head off now. Because, people just kept accusing chicks of being witches, and they would just drown them or burn them.
Two wrongs don't make a right.
In this case, I think a couple more wrongs would have prevented a lot more deaths, if they were just directed at the correct people. So
yeah, anyway. So, this cage isn't actually a cage. From the outside, it looks like anything but a cage. It's like a quaint little cottage type in Essex, and it's just this nice little house, and it's small, and I would have never imagined the history of it from just looking at it.
Do they Airbnb it? Because that would be a cool place to go.
I don't think they do.
10,000 patrons. Here we come.
10,000. Yeah, we'd have to get to 10,000 to book the thing or buy it. We have to buy it.
Oh my God, that'd be amazing.
It's for sale.
I'm sure Zach Baggins already owns it, lived in it, and has gone blind from it.
Okay, so this building is located in St. Osyth, Essex in England, and it was purchased by a Vanessa Mitchell in 2004, but she ended up pulling like an Amityville Horror in 2008, which is like fleeing her home with her baby. So it's kind of crazy.
Does she have like a full-blown story too, or is it just like she just left like F this place?
Oh, there's a story.
Okay.
So yeah, so I'm going to cover Ursula Kemp, and then I'm going to go over Mitchell's story. So Vanessa Mitchell's story about the whole thing. Okay, so the cage itself dates back to medieval times. We've covered that. It was used as a holding cell during the 16th century, all the way up to 1908.
Holy shit.
And yeah,
that's 400 years.
Yeah. So and that's pretty 1908's pretty recent. It's not that long ago.
Yeah, it is.
Fred Astaire was alive.
Wow.
Yeah.
I like how we judge things based off of Fred Astaire.
Because I'm pretty sure he's born in 1899.
Really?
I'm pretty sure.
So like should we start just abbreviating things like BFE before Fred Astaire?
It's A. It's F-A.
Oh, my bad,
it's
dog.
Astaire. A-S-T-A-I-R-E.
My bad. I'm not a Fred Astaire fan as much as you are.
I love
Fuck
Fred
me,
Astaire.
I guess. I put on a song called Fred Astaire yesterday, and she's like, "This shit sucks." I was like, "Thanks for destroying my childhood," or I don't know, my sophomore year in high school. Screw you.
And then was it Dancing Cheek to Cheek or something? No. We were singing Tomato, Tomato, Potato, Potato, whatever. And I was like, "Have you ever seen that movie?" He's like, "No."
I have not.
Okay. Anyway.
How dare I?
Enough about Fred Astaire. Shit, where was I? Okay, so it was turned into a smaller inhabitable home in the 1970s. So during the 1500s, they would use it to hold witches, right? Accused witches. But after that, they would use it as like a drunk tank. So if you were super drunk, they'd just leave you in there until you were sober. So
once they got done with the whole like killing witches thing, they're like, let's just lock up a bunch of drunks in there.
So if you were just doing bad stuff or whatever, they would just put you in there. And unfortunately for the witches, they don't get that luxury of being like, we get to leave at the end of the day. You know what I mean? Ursula Kemp was apparently a fairly prominently accused witch, as well as some of her associates that were held there. And I honestly have heard her name before, but I didn't know who she was. So when I came across it, I was like, okay, I have to cover her, because why not? You might as well.
Yeah, if your location overlaps with like a famous person or like, I don't know, a famous like infamous person, so to speak, you kind of have to cover both at the same time.
So Kemp was born there in Essex and was between 25 or 35 and was a midwife/healer during her time. And apparently she cared for the children of a Grace Thurlow. And when Thurlow's son Davy was sick, Kemp was able to help him recover from his illness.
So they're like, burn her!
Well, she was accused of witchcraft after her baby girl Joan fell from her cradle and broke her neck and died. And Thurlow turned to Kemp again when Thurlow herself became disabled. So Thurlow got better with Kemp's help, but refused to pay Kemp for her fee, like her little healing fee, right? The women argued over money, and Kemp threatened to get even. So,
oh shit!
Who would have guessed that Thurlow would relapse and become disabled again? You know.
Well, it's like if you have someone who's a healer that's healing you, and then you won't pay them, they're like, "I'm just gonna stop helping you now," like, and you're gonna get sick again. You know what I mean?
But they don't think about it that way. I think it's fun that we're doing like both kind of like medical weird, silly things.
Yeah, mine gets kind of crazy.
Okay. Anyway, so Thurlow claimed that Kemp supposedly put a hex on her family after they argued about the money. And that's why everything bad happened to her and her children. So after her daughter died, I guess her son got sick again. Any little thing that happened, she blamed it on Kemp.
So Thurlow's daughter was the one that fell out of the crib and broke their neck? Okay, cool.
Yeah. And Alice Leatherdale claimed that her daughter, Elizabeth, saw Kemp, who murmured at her because, you know, why would people murmur at you, I guess? Or people whisper all the time.
Yeah. I mean, if you're going to talk shit about someone and you're going to do it under your breath, it's a murmur.
But like, I walk around sometimes and I'll be thinking something in my head and say something out loud. but like super quietly, and I'm not murmuring at anyone. I'm just talking to myself like a crazy person.
You murmur about me all the time. Like I walk by you and all I hear is
goddamn bitch.
Yeah, pretty much.
Apparently Kemp murmured at her, and Elizabeth then fell ill and died.
Wow.
Leading Leatherdale to believe Kemp was the reason. So everyone was just like, blame this chick. She's the one that did it. And she was also forced to confess to other quote-unquote satanic acts, like preventing beer from brewing or sending animal familiars to kill and maim enemies.
Wow. Those are two very different charges.
Yeah.
This sounds like a Dungeons and Dragons game. It really does.
I totally get that if she actually did those things, then that's super messed up. But I think that some twat at the factory didn't get his beer just right and wasted a whole bunch of money doing it. And they were just like, so blame the witch. Just blame someone else so we don't get in trouble for messing up the beer.
Right.
You know what
I can't take blame for this.
It's
so let's
just so
blame
dumb.
a scapegoat.
And then
a goat showed up and killed someone, and they're like, it's the witch.
And then these women that pointed at her being a witch were just catty bitches. They were just like, I'm not paying you, so I'm going to kill you instead or get you killed, because that way I can blame someone for the reason why I'm miserable or whatever. Like, it's just mind-blowing, the stuff that happened during the witch trials.
It's really crazy to think about, like, if the witch trials were going on right now, like, just think about, like, the current situation that we have in whatever society you're in, whether you're, like, from a different country or whatever, and just think about how much people would manipulate calling someone a witch if they had, like, a disagreement over literally anything, you know?
Yeah.
And that's what happened. Like, people would just be like, you're a witch. And then next thing you know, like, you have to prove you're not a witch or you're going to die. And sometimes the only ways that you could prove you're not a witch is by dying. That sucks.
Yeah. Kemp was also forced to name other local women as accomplices in witchcraft.
I hope she picked people she hated.
Which led to even more finger pointing. And then led to 14 women who became known as the St. Osith Witches. So they created their own freaking K-pop band.
Wow.
We
do not like ye. We like ye, like ye, like ye. I hate that goddamn song.
Oh, okay. Anyway, if you guys haven't listened to Twice, go listen to Twice. I love them. Continuing on. What's even more messed up is Kemp's own 8-year-old son, Thomas, was forced to testify against his mother, as well as Elizabeth Bennet, who is not of Pride and Prejudice fame.
I was going to say, that name sounds familiar.
No, not Pride and Prejudice, Elizabeth. Different one. Thomas testified that his mother had familiars. There was a gray cat named Tiffin, a white lamb named Titty, a black...
So many titty jokes this episode.
A black toad called Pigeon, and a black cat named Jack. And these familiars were given beer and cake and were allowed to suck blood from Kemp's body. Thomas also stated that he witnessed someone returning to Kemp, stating that the spirits were sent to kill a local man and his wife. And with such damning testimony, both were found guilty for, quote-unquote, bewitching to death, which is so stupid. It's just... Ugh. One kid says something, a couple other people say something, and then they're just like, she's a witch. Be done with it.
It's sad that it was her son. And, like, when you say, like, was forced to, like, testify, I sincerely wonder, like, if they fed him this story and said, like, whatever they would convince a kid to do. Or if he, like, said this stuff because he had been convinced that she actually was a witch. That's some very specific and very bizarre testimony, though. If witches were real, where the hell did they all go? Okay.
They gotta hide their powers now.
Well, like, I just feel like someone would be like, yeah, man, like, I broke up with this chick. I came over and there was, like, a toad and a cat sucking blood out of her. And I was like, fuck this, I'm out. It's like, you don't hear that stuff anymore.
Well, everyone has pets now.
Okay, no, it's not a common thing for people to let pets suck blood out of them. That's all I'm saying.
But I'm saying, like, maybe in the middle of the night, they're like, come suck my blood.
Sneaking away, and they're like, hey, Arya, come here, suck my blood.
Suck my blood. All I can think of is, like, Dracula-like voice just saying that now.
I hate you so much.
Okay, anyway, supposedly, Kemp made a full confession to Justice Brian Darcy in private, which is funny because we just went over Elizabeth Bennet and now there's a Darcy. It's just so
This
Pride
is
and
weird.
Prejudice. I bet there was a lot of Pride and Prejudice. Okay. She confessed that her familiars were 2 male spirits that killed people and 2 female spirits that brought illness onto people and destroyed cattle, which I think is very specific. She confessed to all the things that Thurlow accused her of, which is super crappy. The 2 of them were hanged, so Elizabeth and Kemp were both hanged, spending their final weeks chained within the cage in 1582. And 6 other women were hanged along with Kemp, many of which confessed to witchcraft despite knowing the consequences, because sometimes they're just like, just get it over with. I don't want to be stuck here. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
How crappy of a situation they're in. There's even a plaque on the property stating Kemp's residence there in history. So on the plaque it says, Ursula Kemp was kept here until her hanging in 1582.
Like, you're so disgusted or frightened or offended by witches, and then like you make a plaque to brag about the fact that you kept one there. Like, that just doesn't make any sense.
Maybe it was way later that they added it, though.
Maybe.
Little known fact, or fact that I personally didn't know until I researched this, is children of executed witches were left to fend for themselves. Nobody took care of them after their parents died. They were just left. And that means those children throughout history have either been badasses and made it, or more likely died of starvation or neglect, which is super sad. And then think of all the ghost children because of that. Oh my God. Like, all the ghost children. One of my biggest fears. Like, it's just so messed up.
So you're blaming the witch hunters for all this disembodied child laughter
all
that you
the
keep
disembodied
hearing.
Child laughter. It's their fault. Those bastards. In 1921, there were 2 skeletons that were discovered in a nearby garden, and the bodies weren't near any real burial ground. It was just off somewhere else, not like consecrated ground or anything. And both skeletons had iron rivets in their elbows and knees. Apparently, this was supposed to keep witches from rising from the grave. And people assume that these are the 2 women, but there isn't any solid evidence to prove that. There hasn't been any carbon dating done on it or anything like that. According to sources, 3 witches were tried in 1645, and 5 more died before their trials. So the skeletons could be any one of those people. And
so other women that were awaiting trial to be witches died because of the conditions they were being kept in?
I guess so.
Again, how are there not consequences for people if you don't even complete your trial to prove that they're witches if they die in your custody?
Yeah, or if people stone them to death or something like that, you know what I mean? The house the skeletons were found at inexplicably burned in 1932, leading them to rebury the remains where they found them. And then 30 years later, the skeletons were exhumed and sold to a witchcraft museum. Rude.
Rude.
It's just like, we found these bones. You guys want to buy them? Like, how messed up?
We think they were witches because the skeletons appear to have been tortured horribly.
Yeah, one of the skeletons, all the bones were like super mangled and messed up. So, I mean, they obviously weren't treated well. The skeleton was then sold again in the 1990s to Robert Oscar Lenkovics until his death in 2002, when it was then reburied at the original site. So this poor skeleton, all these bones were just sold again, moved around, buried, exhumed, buried. It's just, if you want ghosts, that's how you get ghosts.
Like, why can't you just let someone rest in peace? Like, isn't there a saying about that? Oh yeah, it's rest in peace. Like, you're supposed to put it on a gravestone, even for like evil people.
So Vanessa Mitchell's story goes something like this. She bought the home in 2004 for 148,000 British pounds, which is approximately 205,000 today, which is about 257,000 US dollars. There's some numbers for you.
Good conversion.
Thanks.
I like it.
So that's quite a bit of money for
it's
this
a solid
little house.
investment.
It's a lot of money for this little house, and she didn't know that it was haunted at all. But that house is small. How could you pay almost $300,000 for a house so tiny and it's not even a new build?
You know what they say though? Location, location, location. Like this this must have been a prime spot.
I wonder if that price is a steal for the area or something like that. You know, I'm really curious as to what houses cost there, because I'd be really interested in finding out. So anybody who lives in Essex or anywhere near there, let us know, because we're curious. She apparently wasn't told about any of the paranormal activity within the home, and the home's history is pretty easily seen throughout the home. You can see all the old fixtures.
You mean like the plaque that says super famous witch was lived here or whatever?
There is that plaque that's there. But she would have never guessed that it was actually haunted. You know what I mean? And she knew it had a history, just not that dark of a history, although she probably did know that there was a witch that got hanged there or whatnot. But how can you not think that this place is haunted with all that history? Especially with a plaque that says, "We kept witches."
A lot of people like that are lukewarm to like paranormal stuff, or at least just haven't experienced anything or just see movies. They're just like, oh, I don't believe in that shit. Or even if they haven't even sat down to decide whether or not they believe in it. If it's like, good price, you like the house, might be haunted, ghosts aren't real, let's just move in. And then, shit happens.
What's even more interesting is that there's a freaking coffin alley that runs alongside this house. And what that is a passageway where bodies were carried on their way to the cemetery. Like, hello, ghosts. Like, it's just so mind-blowing. And this particular one is said to have been the path that they took the witches who died while at the cottage. Or at the cage. I mean, it's a cottage now, but it's just insane that this is right next to it. I would not have paid that much money.
I would not have bought that place.
Even for location. Like, that's
maybe
just
she was
scary.
trying to flip it? I don't know.
I hear that was a flop.
I was going to say, this is a flop for sure.
She reported that soon after having moved in, she saw ghostly figures and was even pushed over while she was pregnant. Even mysterious splatters of blood kept appearing on walls and on the ground. Things like Coke cans and sugar packets would be thrown across the room. One of Mitchell's cousins was hit in the head once when she was alone in the house. And when I saw this and read this, I was just like, maybe this ghost is like, you're going to get diabetes, bitch.
Yeah, I was going to say, that's not a bad thing. Like, this sugar's not good for you, and just chucking it across.
I was just like dying. Okay. She's even been spanked by said spirits and has put the house on the market twice since having purchased it. That's some kinky ghosts.
I was going to say, yeah. Isn't there I'm pretty sure someone posted a video in the Scary Spooky Friends group on Facebook.
Someone did.
Wasn't that chick like twerking and she got spanked by a ghost?
Yeah. You could see the fog come in and just like move behind her. It was, yeah. Go to our Facebook, facebook.com/Scarish
podcast.
Yep, that
click
one.
on groups. Yeah, I will say a lot of people are like, how come ghosts like from 2000 on around screaming, "I'm Britney, bitch"? It's always someone that's like super old. Like, I feel like a ghost from today
would spank you
while you're twerking, even if they just haven't learned how to yell yet. They're just like, they're in their Patrick Swayze, like the beginning of Ghost when he's starting to figure out how to push the sneaker. You know what I mean? They haven't gotten like full blown end of the movie Patrick Swayze where they can do a bunch of stuff. So, like, those other ghosts have been around for a long time. That's why they can yell stuff. But,
okay.
Yeah, the newer ghosts are still learning. Give them time.
Okay, so Mitchell claims to have seen 3 separate ghosts while living there. On the first day that she moved in, she saw a tall, dark male spirit. She's also seen a ghostly woman carrying a wooden bowl full of herbs, which I think could possibly be Ursula Kemp, because she was a healer who used herbs and things like that.
I agree with you.
A friend of hers saw a female figure upstairs at one point when at the very same time, 3 others heard a loud crash come from the same area, which I would have ran out of there so fast from, because that's just so scary. Noises probably scare me the most.
Those witches made me shit my pants. It couldn't have been that I was super scared.
Other well-known phenomena to occur within the cage: footsteps heard on the staircase, bedroom doors fly open on their own, and a number of people have experienced scratches or unexplained marks. There have been reports of a type of possession where people are overcome with uncontrollable rage or depression or things like that. Someone has also reported suicidal thoughts after having visited the property, which is super intense. Definitely don't want to go. One of the creepier things that has been experienced on the property is her security cameras catching what she claims to be a satanic goat roaming her property. But see,
how can you tell a satanic goat?
How would you know it's a satanic goat? Like, is it chanting and sacrificing its brethren on your lawn? Like,
I swear I saw that goat playing Dungeons and Dragons.
No!
It has to be satanic.
Or it's just like walking around with a big old chain with like weird markings on it. And like,
that ghost was wearing eyeliner and it painted its nails black.
It had a hood and everything.
That's so funny.
Oh my God. The part I think is just a mom being afraid for what might happen to her and her baby. You know what I
Right.
mean? She's like, I see a goat, all this weird shit's happening, it's satanic. But I would want to know if goats are common in the area or not, because if they are, then it's just something else to figure out. And if they're not, that thing is straight up evil. I wonder if there are other reports of seeing a goat walking around the village. You know what I mean? Because if there are other reports from other people, then it's not just her.
So instead of like the spectral dog, it's a goat, which I understand is symbolism for the devil. Like certain people that don't understand where that symbol came from. But like the movie The Witch, where like there's the goat that's black that's like supposed to be evil, and like everyone's like creeped out by it. So I don't know if that's the case where it was like not her goat, but a black goat, or a goat that just looks scary that just like wandered over. I don't know though, because it's like you said, it could be just a mom who's afraid for her kid that's had creepy things happen,
Right.
that's seeing things that scare her, even if it could just be like a goat wandered by her property, and the goat was just like, hey, do you have any cans? No. Cool, I'm gonna go stand on some really hard stuff to balance on. Adios. And then it hardcore parkoured out of there.
We should do some goat yoga or something sometime.
Goat yoga.
Okay. So, Mitchell lived there for 3 years before she had to call it quits. And the thing that made her decision to leave was the apparition of a man that was seen standing over her baby's bed. And she's allowed paranormal investigative groups to come and investigate. And they've also experienced different strange phenomena while they were there. And she's been trying to sell the house, not being able to live there with all the haunting activity. So it's empty. Previous owners decades ago did report books and things falling off their shelves, so it does give Mitchell's experiences some type of credence. One source even said a previous owner named Phil was a manic depressive and hung himself in the home stairwell.
That's sad.
Yeah, it's super sad, which is probably why they hear steps going up the stairs, you know what I mean? After she fled the home in 2008, she began renting it, but no residents ever stayed long. One of the tenants even reported a menagerie of strange happenstances themselves. And
that definitely shows credibility to her stories if she keeps renting it out to try and make money off of it. And tenants are just like, nope, I'm out of here.
Though the home has been on the market for quite a while, it seems like there just aren't any potential buyers in the market right now. I read an article that was posted in May of this year, and apparently you can start booking appointments to check it out in June. So now it's July. I don't know. Maybe someone actually went and bought it. Who knows? I haven't checked.
1,000 patron goal?
No. Maybe 5,000. Anyway, Mitchell's been quoted saying, I believe that in some ways the house chose me to tell its story, and I believe that with such a unique house, the next owners will also have a duty to look after it and continue telling its story, end quote. I don't want to be that person. Like,
I kind of do.
No.
I won't lie. I will rent that shit out. I will Airbnb that super hard.
A lot of people were saying that, like, rent it out on the weekends.
Hell
People
yeah,
will eat
dude.
that shit up. It seems from different sources that the home isn't so violently haunted anymore. It's still haunted, just none of the trying to shove people down the stairs and scaring the poop out of them type of thing. Like a type of harmony, supposedly. So I'm not sure. There have been a lot of investigative websites that I've seen, a lot of pages that were like, we had all these experiences. It's definitely haunted. But she's the only one, the owner's the only one that's been like, it's full of harmony.
Right.
So it kind of freaks me out.
I think she's trying to get people to go check it out because, like, to this point, it just sounds like everyone that went there is like, no, this place is super haunted.
Right.
And she's like, it's a happy haunting now. Although witches are supposed to be like one with nature and commune with nature and connected to nature.
Right.
Per that documentary we've been watching, Vampire Diaries. So I hate you for making me watch all this crap, by the way. But seriously, like, I wonder if, like, there's this horrible thing that happened, like their spirits are tied to it, or they've been imprinted onto this place for some reason, in some way, shape, or form, and because it was uninhabited or like just left alone for so long, that maybe it's just kind of theirs, you know?
Yeah.
And the more she grew to respect the fact that that's not her house, things have calmed down, at least for her.
Well, that's
Whereas
good.
other people that show up, they're like, this is my place, like, I rent this place now, and the witch is like, oh yeah, is that so? We're gonna mess with you now. But who knows?
I think it's more just maybe they weren't witches. They weren't actually witches. It's just people that are mad.
Oh yeah, that's true.
People that are really upset.
Really, really disgruntled people.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. That's a very good point. Or maybe, and I don't take this angle very often, they were absolutely witches. They were like, the jig is up. They totally got caught. They got killed and like, but joke's on you. We're going to haunt the cage forever. Suck it.
Then that does seem like the Bennett witches of Vampire Diaries.
I hate you so much.
Oh my gosh, Elizabeth Bennet.
Okay, I'm done with this. That was really good, though. That was good research, too.
Thanks.
So, solid conversion on those numbers. I was wondering how much that was
yes.
going to cost us if we were going to buy it right meow. So, good stuff, Robin. Golf clap for you.
Thank you.
Awesome. So, I'm going to go ahead and move into my topic. And I got to say, like, this week, I really wanted to go over a curse, and there's a lot of them to choose from. And I don't know how many of you out there are Aqua Teen Hunger Force fans, but I used to absolutely love that show, especially when it first came out for the first years of it. I know it's called something different now, like they changed the name to like Aqua Force Unit Squad 1 or something like that.
What?
They changed it to like Aqua Teen something something whatever at some point because the creators were just bored.
All I hear is, I want candy, bubblegum, and taffy.
I love that episode so much. But one of my favorite episodes of that show is the Love Mummy episode. I don't know how many of you have seen it. But to make a long story short, they find a mummy buried under their house.
Are you my mummy?
I hate you. In the crawl space or in the basement. And it comes to life, of course, and starts making demands of them. And, like, if they don't want to do it, it starts, like, saying, like, curse. So me and my friends used to do that shit to each other all the time. And the mummy starts making ridiculous demands, like, lobster. So they have to go get a Maine lobster. And they bring it like steak, and he like smacks the steak out of someone's hands, and he's like, overdone. He's an asshole, is what I'm getting to. But every time I think of curse, I think of that episode, and I yell it usually in my brain at the very least. So because of that, I decided that I wanted to cover a mummy. And not just any mummy, but arguably the most famous mummy ever outside of Imhotep. So, dear listener, I present to you the curse of King Tut's tomb, which is some fun alliteration to say. So, this curse goes by many names, and this curse is kind of a broader curse, too. It's not just King Tut, but it's talked about how if you disturb any of the pharaohs, a curse will, like, come to get you, basically. So they call it the curse of the pharaohs, or the pharaoh's curse. So regardless of what you call it, it's just no good to be on the wrong side of it. So it's not like the whole, like, you mustn't read from the book type of curse, where it's like you really have to fuck up in order to get cursed. This is more like a just don't open my tomb and disturb my eternal rest, dick. Because it's like they kind of earned it. Not really. They were born into royalty and they just died and got a bunch of shit when they died. But let's be real. Like, I think we can all understand, like, being woken up and being annoyed. Like, have you ever been woken up by someone who was not supposed to wake you up? You probably thought, man, I hope they die at one point, because it's really, really frustrating. So there are a lot of angles to come at this thing from. King Tut is very famous. The opening of the tomb is very well known. The curse of the tomb is also very well known. So I like to preface this all by saying I am not a historian.
Yeah.
Not a scientist,
not
none of these things. I'm definitely not an Egyptologist. Don't expect me to pronounce all these names correctly. I have phonetic spelling based off of the most accurate pronunciations I could find on the interwebs.
We're just your lovely podcast
Yeah,
hosts.
and even those pronunciations have downvotes where people are like, this isn't how you say it. So I'm going to say it wrong, but just understand that I'm trying, okay? That said, we're going to talk about King Tut in general, then the discovery of the tomb, and then we're going to get down and dirty and jump into the curse. So there was this guy back in the day named Tutankhamun, which is how I was taught to say it, which never made sense to me why people called him Tut.
Isn't it Tutankhamun?
Sure. Tutankhamun works also. But a lot of people say Tutankhamun, doesn't matter. What matters is he is known as Tut. And he was born in 1341.
Well, you don't want to be called King Tut. That's like...
That's kind of lame. But he was born in 1341 BC or BCE, depending on which one you like to say. And the interesting thing about the pharaohs, and I didn't know this until I did this research, was they used to change their names when they became pharaoh. Sort of like the Pope. When the Pope becomes the Pope, they change their name and they take on a new name. So anyways, his papa or dada or father, depending on how you like to say it, was most likely, and I'm saying most likely because all these dates are subject to, like, if you look this up, it was either this or this. And when it comes to, like, who came first, it was like, it was either this person or this person. Or lineage is like, we're pretty sure these two people were connected. So don't quote me for sure, but it's pretty much believed that King Tut's father was most likely a dude named Akhenaten. It's spelled very weird. That's how it said it was supposed to be pronounced. I kept playing it over and over. Doesn't matter. So the whole name change thing. Well, Tut's dad had a different name when he was Pharaoh, and it was, I swear to you, Amenhotep.
No way.
Yeah, so it's super similar to Emotep, which I was just super excited about because I watched that documentary with Brendan Fraser where like that mummy shows up.
Oh,
So
yeah.
I was
know
like,
what you're talking about.
it's totally real, 100%. So side note, if you're looking for facts without sarcasm, you came to the wrong place, dog. But let's keep going. Anyway, Emotep died, and shortly after, Tut took over the throne. There's debate about who took over between the two of them for like 2 years.
Well, he was a kid, right?
Yeah, I'll get to that too. Some say it was Nefertiti, by the way, and like there's this whole thing between the two of them, but I'm going to focus on Tut here. So Tut's reign began in 1332 BC, or BCE, whatever. And for those of you who math well, you'll know this kid was 9 years old when he took over. So you think of like a 9-year-old pharaoh or king, and you think this dude is probably like, I'm going to play with my Power Rangers all day, and every Sunday is now free ice cream day for everyone.
Hell yeah.
Because it's a 9-year-old. You know, you figure if they had all the power, that's what they'd do. It's not exactly what King Tut did. He took over. He was like, I'm going to marry my half-sister. What up? And
well, you don't think his advisors told him to do that?
I don't know, but this was his choice. Like, he pushed it through. And so he was a bit of a Lannister, not exactly a Joffrey, but still. Him and his half-sister, who may have been his cousin, because they're not quite sure, they would actually go on to have 2 kids, both of which died as infants, which is super sad. They, like, examined the deaths.
Do you think it had something to do with the fact that they were related?
Yeah, I think the second kid died because of a lot of birth defects. The first kid died because of birth defects and premature labor. They said that they think it was born at 5 or 6 months, so it wasn't fully developed. So there's a lot of stuff that they've been able to determine because people are obsessed with King Tut. And despite taking over at a young age, he ruled for a solid 10 years, and he was very popular. Some folks say...
He was 19?
Yeah.
Holy crap.
Some folks say that his vizier, I think that's how you say it, or vizier. Vizier is how you say it. His vizier was actually the one in charge.
Okay, I was like, is that like a man bra?
And as a side note, what is a vizier? Think advisor to the king / pharaoh. Basically, it's the position Jafar had in Aladdin. Fuck that guy. But Tut was known to be very popular, and he was really good at handling his own PR because all indicators point to everyone really liking this dude, even though he's very, very young, and someone else was basically thought to be in charge. But Tut got a lot of this credit. And one of the things his dad did when his dad was pharaoh was ban the god Amun, A-M-U-N, and say that everyone had to switch to Aten, A-T-E-N. And people were like, dude, like, I just bought this Amun t-shirt. I am not taking it back. They won't let me exchange this. It's not happening. So he was unpopular. And he even had the priests of Amun hunted down, and they went underground for a while. And it was like this religion that had been around for a while, all of a sudden was forbidden. So Tut came into power, and he was like, nah, guys, let's switch it back to Amun.
Amun to that.
He was like, I hate you so much. He was like, I have this WWAD bracelet. I know it works both ways, but I'm so used to saying Amun. And the people were like, hell yes, I like this kid. And BT Dubs, his name literally means Amun is just all right with me. Not really.
What?
It's a song. Like, Jesus is just all right with me.
Oh, I've never heard that.
But seriously, his name meant living image of Amun, which is kind of a weird name to take, saying you're the living image of this god. I'd say it's a little bit presumptuous, but it really worked for him. And he gets to around 18 or 19. His popularity is sky high. So, of course, he dies. Bummer. And it's long.
What medical condition was it?
I'll tell you. So It's long been a mystery of how he died. And a lot of people for a very long time thought that he was murdered. It's sort of this legend that's been passed down throughout the ages. And people say that he was struck on the back of the neck, severing his spinal cord with some sort of blunt object.
So someone murdered him.
And there's all these ideas, yes. And there's all these ideas of who would have done it and who would have taken power and who would it have like benefited. And they actually CT scanned King Tut's remains and came back like his neck wasn't broken. He did not die that way. There's a lot of theories out there still for how King Tut died. A very popular theory is based off of what they found in the CT scan, which is that his leg was broken, and it was broken when he was still alive, and he died from an infection that he got after breaking his leg. Ew. And some say that there was malaria involved. Some say that based on his age and some of the samples they took, it can't be malaria. Some folks say that he had cracked ribs, which some people dispute as whether or not it happened before or after, but that he might have fallen from a chariot, which caused internal bleeding. And I'm sure that crazy dude from Ancient Aliens right now is just yelling aliens while he's listening to this, which I'm sure he does not. But the point is, he's dead. So that's what matters.
Wait, the guy from Ancient Aliens, or?
No, King Tut.
Okay.
Quick side note, though. Guess who took over when King Tut died? Jafar. That's right.
No
His
way.
vizier. 100% true. Jafar took over. And what's funny is that I was complaining about how, like, these names are kind of kooky and they're hard to read. And his name is A-Y. And it's pronounced A. And he was best known for the gesture he gave people to let them know everything was good. 2 thumbs up.
No way. Oh.
And he also had the
I get your stupid joke.
He also had the ability to show up places, elbow a jukebox, and it would start playing a song on its own. And again,
I cannot believe
you fell for that because
Yes.
you're dumb. Facts mixed with sarcasm. His name seriously was A-Y. A.
Okay.
Anyways, Tut is dead. They entomb him. They mummify him. The whole 9 yards. He was buried with a bunch of shit, a bunch of gifts from other places, which really let people know, like, he wasn't just loved by his own people. He was loved by a bunch of the neighboring nations who all sent him stuff when he died. Side note, didn't write this down in my script. They also mummified his dick, which is kind of weird. But more importantly, and I think this must have been in his will, he was like, if you mummify my dick, you gotta mummify it hard, because I want people to know. They mummified his dick erect somehow. So hats off to you Egyptians from 3,500 years ago for figuring out a way to mummify a penis while it's hard. So, weird shit. Let's get to it, though. All right. People think he was popular. He had all these gifts. His dick was handled with care. But they also, like, opened the tomb eventually, and they saw that he had, like, body armor and a bow and a bunch of shit that shows that he had been in battle. And there's, like, symbols on the wall that depict a couple of battles that they know to have taken place during his reign. It's most likely he didn't actually participate, but they kind of, like, gave him credit for it, which is pretty cool. He even got 2 things that I think we all want when we die. The first one is deification. They basically made him into a god.
That's
and
cool.
a cult to worship in his name, which, like, who doesn't want that when they go? So no bullshit. Like, they gave him, like, basically the power where you could appeal to Tut for forgiveness or for healing from an illness brought upon you by you being naughty. So, like, if you sinned and it caused you to get sick, you could ask King Tut to heal you.
So if you got syphilis because you were cheating.
King Tut was your go-to guy.
Wow.
Yeah. So he was a baller and a shot caller. So there he is in his sarcophagus. And then a bit of time lapse happens if you're picturing it, and his tomb is lost. And enter Howard Carter, which sounds like Howard Stark married Peggy Carter and took her name because she's a badass and he would have to. So this is actually really interesting to me, and I'm going to try and go over it and mix it in with the curse. So Carter was excavating tombs and digging for new ones throughout the early 1900s and 1910s. So World War I hits around like mid to end of 1910s. And he's basically told, like, you can't do that stuff anymore. No one's going to give you money to do excavations or archaeology. But what you can do is be a diplomat and a courier and a translator to help us with the war effort, which he did.
Take that, Benbridge scholars.
I hate you. I knew you were going to do so many mummy jokes in this. So when World War I ended, he was like, hell yes, let's go find more dead people. So he heads back to the Valley of Kings. Now, the Valley of Kings is where most of the pharaohs of a particular age were entombed, and he starts digging again. And in 1922, his benefactor, a guy named Lord Carnarvon, and I'm going to get his name wrong a bunch, but Carnarvon was basically like, yo, dog, like, I'm paying for one more session of digging, and if you don't find shit, you are cut off. Because a lot of times other folks found stuff, they brought him in to oversee the excavation, but he wasn't discovering things on his own. So he was like, damn, I better make this one count then. And so he decided to go back to the Valley of Kings, like I said. He took with him a canary. This is apparently very well known. And canaries are usually taken into mines or tombs to see if the air is poisonous, because the canary will die before a human being will be affected to the point where they can't escape. You know what I mean?
Well, if you're opening an ancient tomb,
you got to be aware of that.
Right.
Like mold, black mold is some scary shit. So he has this canary with him. That's where the whole saying canary in a coal mine comes from. For anyone who has not heard that saying, now you know. So some say he just wanted to take it because he was lonely and it was his pet. But he goes back and is checking out these buildings that he's looked at before and just said, like, there's nothing here. And he decides, like, we're going to knock these buildings down, clear out the rocks, and we're going to start digging. And then on November 4th, 1922, their water boy was running to get them some high-quality H2O when he tripped over a rock. And the water boy is like, damn, dude, that rock did not budge. So he looked closer and he realized it was really in there. It was not going to come out. So he went and got Carter. And Carter was like, oh, snap, crackle, and pop. We need to dig here. And he realized that this kid had tripped over the top of a staircase. So they dug down until they found a door that was covered in hieroglyphics. So at this point, he's been told, like, what you've been doing your whole life, you're going to be cut off unless you find something cool. He's digging in a spot that he's dismissed before, and some kid just happens to trip over the tip of a staircase. He digs down, finds a door with hieroglyphics. He covers it up, covers the dig up so it's safe, sends a telegram to his benefactor, and is like, you need to get out here ASAP. He's out there within a couple of weeks. November 23rd, he shows up.
A couple weeks?
Yeah, with his daughter, Evelyn, who we're just going to call Evie.
Oh my God.
And I think, honestly, that's probably why she's named Evie. But I don't know because she doesn't come back in the story a whole lot more. But in addition to them, a guy named James Breasted came out from the United States because he was an expert in hieroglyphics to try and decipher whose, like, tomb or, like, whether or not this was a cache of, like, valuables, what it was. So when he gets out there, they basically, like, chisel out a piece of the door. And the chisel was, like, given to him by his mom on his 17th birthday. Like, there's a story about the chisel.
That's so
there is a
cute.
story about everything when it comes to this thing. So he chisels out a little spot on the door, and he looks in. And Carnarvon is like, do you see anything? To which Carter replies, and this is apparently a very famous quote that I didn't realize was famous, yes, wonderful things. That's what he yells back to him. What he saw was, essentially, a shit ton of gold and a bunch of ebony treasures. So it's like very rare materials plus gold.
So dragonglass?
He's struck it rich. Yeah, he found some dragonglass to fight the White Walkers. So this is a big deal. And even though it's like 1922, the media picks up on the fact that this is a big deal, and they start sending people who have to stay in hotels that are way far off the site so they can come out and wait for the day that they're going to open this thing up. And Breasted is hard at work trying to figure out who this thing belongs to. And at some point, after they get done deciphering all these hieroglyphics, he's like, we are pretty sure that this is Tut's tomb. And, like, the world is excited. Like, people are legitimately excited. And the Lord Carnarvon guy has to go back to UK or wherever he's from, pretty sure it's the UK, and take care of some stuff before he can come back out. And they're waiting for him to come back before they open the door. So in December of 1922, they're waiting. They've figured out whose tomb this is. And while they're, like, excavating around it, they find two statues that had golden serpents on their crowns. So these statues were of, like, men wearing crowns with golden serpents in them. That night, it said, and this is a weird story, they printed this in the New York Times in December of 1922. That's where I got this story from. They said that he sent a messenger to his house nearby. No one really knows why. I don't know if someone was there. He was just sending someone to drop something off or pick something up. What is known is that when this messenger arrived, he heard some odd sounds, and he looked around, and he looked and found a snake that was nearly identical to the golden ones that they had seen, just living, and it was in the canary's cage with the bird in its jaws.
That's not good.
They started making a ruckus, like, someone come over here. Everyone ran over there. They actually killed the snake. They said the canary died. They even speculate in some stories that the canary died of fright. And I'm like, if you're in a snake's jaws, you probably died of that. Like, cause of death for a canary, snake's jaws. So the local crew, the folks from around there that they had hired to help them excavate, were like, yo, like, that is a sign if I've ever seen a sign. Like, the Pharaoh does not want that tomb disturbed any further than it already has been. And everyone associated with this project who was not a local replied with, fuck that. We are opening that thing ASAP. Side note, they're idiots. Kind of.
All I can hear is that guy's speech in The Mummy where he's like, it'll never sleep.
I hate you. So, February 16th, 1923 hits. The door is open, and they find the sarcophagus of Tutankhamun, or Tutankhamun, or however you want to say his name. King Tut's sarcophagus has been rediscovered after over 3,000 years. It is still, to this day, considered to be the most intact and best preserved tomb of a pharaoh found in the Valley of Kings ever. They basically opened just the jackpot of tombs. So everyone lives happily ever after, right? I told you that snake canary story. Clearly not. So this lady named Marie Corelli wrote a piece for the New York World magazine. She was a, quote, writer and also a mystic. And she said that dire punishment would come to anyone who disturbed the tomb. The press ate that shit up. So the story is like all over the world. King Tut's tomb found turns into King Tut's curse? ? And everyone's just like waiting for something to happen so that they can kind of associate it with it. A couple months go by, and I say couple generously, and Lord Carnarvon gets bitten by a mosquito.
Malaria?
And I know what you're going to say. It literally says this in my script. I know what you're thinking, Robin. Malaria? Actually, no. Normal mosquito bite. He does not get malaria.
Infection?
He got bit on the face, which is a bummer. It's itchy. Sometimes that happens. No big deal, except for one day he's shaving and oopsies, he clips it. Anyone who's ever shaved that has a pimple or a mosquito bite on your face knows sometimes you scrape the tip off and it starts to bleed, which it did. That sucks. But it doesn't get better. It gets infected. He gets blood poisoning. They open this tomb on February 16th, and by April 5th, the person who funded this expedition had died of blood poisoning. So, of course, press gets this. They send it around the world. King Tut's curse starts to take traction, basically. And despite the press, like, changing the story, people of means still want to see this. It's monumental. It's legitimately historical. And a guy named George Gould, Gould, headed out to the Valley of Kings to see the excavation in progress after the door had been opened. Shortly after visiting, he developed a fever. How shortly? Well, by May 16th, 1923, 3 months after, he was dead.
Wow.
They don't know what the fever was. They just know it was sudden, and he was dead like within days of catching it. That's really quick. And it wasn't just Brits and Americans that were coming out to see this. You think like Egyptians know better, you know? It's just the people who wanted to excavate this and discover it that are being idiots and flying out there. There was an Egyptian that was like, let's go check this out. A man named, and I'm going to get some of this wrong, Prince Ali Kamel Fahmy Bey. I don't think I messed that up, actually. Or we'll call him Prince Ali for short. I'm not going to sing the song.
I thought you were going to.
I don't remember the lyrics, and I don't want to embarrass myself. But he came to check out the dig with his wife on July 10th, 1923. 5 months later, 5 months later, his wife shot him to death.
Wow.
This is 100% true. It was a big deal because this dude was a prince of Egypt. That's another Disney movie. I'm pretty sure it doesn't end that way, though.
No.
Side note.
I love The Prince of Egypt. It's such a good movie.
Never seen it.
Oh my God!
Side note, it said that he was a woman beater and a real piece of shit. A bunch of people that knew him testified to that, and that he used to beat her a bunch. She was acquitted of all charges and walked. She shot this dude to death. She didn't try and dispute the fact that she shot him. It was just about why she shot him. She killed this prince, and she got off, dude. And I was reading some
murder boner?
Yeah, straight up murder boner, but she also like got released. But I was reading some of the details of her story. She actually wound up suing his family for like rights to his shit. And like they went to an Egyptian court, and the Egyptian court was like, nah, dude, we're going to throw this case out. But she still like lived rich for the rest of her life. So she's fascinating. Like everyone attached to this story is absolutely fascinating. So are you ready for a crazy one? This is the one that I almost told you about before the show. And I'm like, I'll tell you in a couple hours. So Lord Carnarvon, the first guy to die, had a couple brothers. We're going to talk about one of them, his brother Aubrey. His brother Aubrey was not present for the excavation at all. This one is said to be cursed by association, and I hope you can see my air quotes on that. He was 56 years old. He was completely blind at 56 years old when this took place. I shit you not, this is 100% true. A doctor who was treating him recommended to him that he have all of his teeth pulled out to help cure his blindness.
What?
So, I mean, this is some straight up
way.
This is some straight up toe, foot, knee, leg, like unicorns in your blood bullshit. And so he was like, all right, sounds good. So
what?
They operated on him. This is totally true. They operated on him, pulled out all of his teeth. That operation resulted in, you fucking guessed it, blood poisoning, September 26, 1923, 7 months after the tomb was opened. The brother of the benefactor was dead from the same thing the first guy died from. Side note, he died blind. No shit, you're dumb.
What?
So is that it? No, not even close. We have a lot more to go.
Oh my gosh.
A man named Sir Archibald Douglas Reed x-rayed Tut's mummy when it was brought to the museum in which it would stay.
They just gotta read from the right book, okay?
I know. Read from the gold book, you idiots.
The answer is Amenephus. God.
Have they never seen the mummy? I guess they wrote it. So, okay. There's this guy. We're going to call him Archibald. I'm not saying his full name again. He was not there for the excavation. He just was the first person to x-ray the mummy's remains. King Tut's remains. Like, he had the mummy in front of him. Like, here's a skeleton of a super famous dude. X-ray that shit. We want to see what we see. That same day, he started feeling very ill. They say that he did not have any symptoms prior to this mummy coming in.
Was it from the radiation?
He x-rayed it. No, they had the radiation precaution in place at the time. So he did not feel well. They sent him home, I guess. Not exactly sure how they handled it. What I can tell you is in 3 days, they were handling his fucking funeral because he died. So people were like starting to get pretty freaked out about this quote unquote curse. And these deaths are not going unnoticed. They're being notched and reported by the media. And the idea of this curse is starting to pick up steam. And we kind of talked about the fact that these things kind of feed on themselves like a snake eating its own tail type of thing. And Howard Carter, the guy who led this expedition, the guy who discovered this tomb, was like all about thumbing his nose at the idea of the curse.
What does that even mean?
It's basically saying like, fuck you, you know?
I know, but why would you thumb your nose?
It's like you're taunting it. It's like you're taunting the idea of a curse. And I'll tell you what like he does. So he sends a friend a gift showing this blasé attitude towards the idea of a curse. When people are like, are you worried about like King Tut's curse? Like it's going to come after you. He's like, no. Sends a friend a gift. So it's technically supposed to be a paperweight. It's something he had commissioned or made. But he sends him a mummified hand wearing a bracelet. It's not an actual mummy's hand.
Oh, okay.
It's just a paperweight he had made. And the bracelet has an inscription on it which reads, "Cursed be he who moves my body." So he's just fucking around, right? He's sending one of his close friends like, look at this stupid shit that I'm going to send you. So the guy he sent that to, his name is Ingham. Weeks later, Ingham's house, unexplained, burned down. Just burned to the ground to ashes. They don't know what caused the fire, but Ingham was like, we're gonna rebuild. And during during the rebuilding, it rained a ton and the entire plot flooded. So it's like King Tut was really just like, fuck you, bro. Like, I'm gonna burn your shit down, and then once it's ashes, I'm gonna flood that shit. Straight up. Like, this totally happened. Like, you can find so many of these things because this curse was so famous, documented in so many places. So this happens. People dismiss it as coincidence. Some people think of it as proof of the curse. Of course, people spread the story that the mummified hand was an actual mummy's hand with an actual bracelet. And I'm sure you can still find that out there on the internet. That is not the case. So some of these are really creepy. And we're going to get to a really creepy / sad one. So there's a man named Hugh Evelyn White who was present during the excavation. They have not confirmed yet whether or not that he assisted with it, which means they probably never will. They know he was there, though. And he was an academic, and he sincerely believed that this curse was real. And these details are really debated, but what is known is that in 1924, so now you're only a year removed from this tomb being opened, he was a lecturer at the University of Leeds, which is where I found this article discussing this event. Was the University of Leeds actually had information written about him and what's about to happen.
So you could say it kind of leads your research?
These are so bad, dude. So I confirm this. They dispute the connection to the curse, but it is known that Hugh Evelyn White hung himself.
Wow.
He killed himself a year after the tomb was opened. And even the Leeds article discusses that they think it's more connected to the death of a friend that he discussed than the actual curse. But a lot of places, especially at the time, picked up that Leeds had been discussing the death of friends that had worked with him during the excavation.
Oh.
Not famous people, like locals that he knew. He claimed, apparently, I'm saying apparently because this isn't 100% confirmed,
all right,
that over 24 people within the first year had died under mysterious circumstances or just like extremely bizarre instances. So he was extremely scared of this, according to most of the press at the time, who did, like, let's be fair, really kind of like feed into this frenzy of the curse. And this is the thing that's the most highly debated. I found this in a few places, so take this with a grain of salt, but it said that the people who discovered his body reported to the papers that they had found slashes on his person that were bleeding, and they discovered a phrase written in blood, quote, "I have succumbed to a curse which forces me to disappear."
What?
They don't talk about that in the University of Leeds article, but they don't outright say this didn't happen. Other places talk about it, and I have not. This is the thing that creeped me out about this the most. I didn't find anything that disputed this.
Wow.
Just places that say he hung himself, that's how he died from hanging, and that he was depressed, and that it was most likely about a friend's passing. That's the dispute. That is the skeptical view of this. And that's super creepy to me. So whether or not this curse was real within a year, this dude thought it was real enough to take his own life. So moving right along, all right, we're going to get to Sir Lee Stack. He's the Governor General of the Sudan. So it's a territory in Egypt that the Brits control at the time. Don't know how it is now. And he was associated with the coordination of guarding the site because the military got involved when they realized all this stuff was going on. They brought in like this curator from like Egypt itself. He was actually a Frenchman who came out there who was like, we're going to catalog everything in here. No one's taking a goddamn thing. He apparently made the project super difficult. And then there was this guy who was the military leader, Sir Lee Stack, who was like making sure that everything was being watched. And like he had people with like weapons there to make sure things were taken care of. More importantly, that the site was protected from like grave robbers, you know? After everything was done, he went back to doing his normal duties. He was driving through Cairo. He actually had a driver driving him through Cairo on November 19th, 1924. This is a year and a half later now. The vehicle was assaulted by Egyptian students. They all pulled out revolvers and started firing rounds into the vehicle.
Why?
He was killed. His driver somehow, while being shot, got them the fuck out of there. But this was a big deal. Like, you can find this shit. Like, the British were pissed at the Egyptian government. They're like, you better handle this shit. They investigated it. They had an idea. They couldn't confirm, like, the students' identities. And it was almost going to be like, hey, he died. We can't figure out who did it. Like the town who got away with murder type of thing.
Yeah.
And then, here's what happened. Whoever the students were to escape, they hijacked a taxi in 1924. Like, a taxi that was there to, like, transport people here and there. They just threw the driver out and stole it. And guess what? That taxi driver positively identified every fucking one of them. The British government made sure they were tried. They were all found guilty. They were hung by the neck until dead. So, like, this shit is crazy. Everyone associated with this curse has a fascinating story. So we're going to get to another fascinating story. This individual was present when the tomb was opened. His name was Aaron Ember. He was an American. He was pals with Lord Carnarvon. So the dude who financed the whole thing has all his friends coming out. He was probably like...
How did he survive?
He didn't. He was the first one to die.
Oh,
he was
you're
the mosquito bite guy. So this guy, and this is where I found this guy's information, was a professor at Johns Hopkins University. Shout out to the universities for keeping track of their faculty and how they passed away, because I could not find articles written by the local newspapers on this one, but I could find stuff written by the universities. I confirmed this there. 1926. We're now 3 years removed from the opening. He and his wife hosted a dinner party, and late one evening, everyone decided to go home. Supposedly, it was a smashing success. An hour after the dinner party ended, their home caught fire. They do not know to this day what caused the fire. They also said that the fire department was significantly delayed for unknown reasons.
We didn't start the fire.
That's a
the
pretty
world
good one.
was...
Yeah, you fucked it up though.
Yeah.
You did all right at the beginning, and then you tried to keep going.
Dang it.
This is true. He and his wife initially had an opportunity to escape the fire. Ember's wife told him, we need to go back in. She stated, and he agreed 100%. She stated, I'm going to go get our son. You need to go get the manuscript that you've been working on, because he had been like pouring all of his effort into writing this thing. Ember went in, got his manuscript, made it out, severely burned, passed out, lost consciousness, woke up in the hospital, Baltimore General Hospital.
Oh my God, she was dead.
He died there a day later. They did not, and it makes note of this in Johns Hopkins University's article about him, he died not knowing his wife and his son died in the fire. They did not get out. So that's really sad. According to the internet, the name of the manuscript he had been working on was the Egyptian Book of the Dead.
Oh, no way.
So I looked it up. I had to know. So I Googled and Googled. I found him. I found all his colleagues. I found the books that they published within the 5 years after the fire. So the same year he died, another man published a book in 1926, and that book had pages that survived in the fire, and that book was called Partial Assimilation in Old Egyptian. This man was of the Jewish faith, and a lot of the stuff that he did out there was to see the merging of the Jewish culture with the Egyptian culture and how the cultures overlapped and how they took things from each other. Then in 1930, 4 years later, a book was published from, quote, a manuscript that survived the fire, possibly the manuscript he went back in for. That one was titled Egypto-Semitic Studies. So this is just straight up like the Hebrew culture mixing in with the Egyptian culture. Nothing was called what the internet states it was called in so many different places.
The Book of the Dead?
Yeah, the Egyptian Book of the Dead.
Okay.
So maybe it was called that and they changed the title because they're like, this is too morbid. Realistically, that's probably bullshit. But I mean, it's still, there's a lot of stuff in that story that's 100% real. And all that stuff that he was writing was about his time spent in Egypt and the things that he was like discovering.
That's crazy.
So we're going to keep going.
Oh my gosh.
Lord Carnarvon. I keep fucking changing his name how it's said, but still the same guy, the benefactor. His half-brother was named Mervyn Herbert. Whenever I hear the name Mervyn, I think Robin Hood Men in Tights when they're marrying him at the end. Like, Mervyn? Your name is Mervyn?
I mean, they're men.
Caught malaria on holiday in Albania, and he died on May 26, 1929. He was 46. This is another curse by association one. Lord, I have his name said differently. The benefactor's secretary, Richard Bethel. He was actually the second person ever in the tomb. He was right behind Howard Carter when he opened that door.
So he cheated death for a long time.
He made it in there first, and it said that while he was there, he took, quote, priceless souvenirs home with him and kept them in his house. In early 1929, he encountered a, quote, series of mysterious fires at his home. On November 15th, 1929, which November 15th is the birthday of two of my close friends, he was found at an upper scale gentleman's club, smothered to death. This dude was straight up murdered. No, by a pillow. Straight up murdered. Everything I found says that they never found out who killed him. And then on February 20th, 1930, so like 3 months later, Richard Bethel Sr., his dad, leapt from his 7th floor apartment window, dying on impact.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
This is horrifying.
This shit is weird. And honestly, when I got to that one, I was like, I feel like that dude from The Mummy, the one whose speech you tried to quote but then didn't quote, the one that was the gigolo and Deuce Bigelow male gigolo that he has to replace when he gets hurt. You know what I'm talking about?
Yes.
That guy?
Yeah.
I feel like if there is an order like that, they open the tomb, they drop that snake off, like, don't fucking do it. And then all these people associated with it did that, and they're like, okay, cool, man, we're going to bide our time, and we're going to kill all of you.
Who would murder him?
I don't know, but like they even said like he supposedly leapt from his window, and police couldn't find any evidence of a struggle, but like they still like marked it down as like mysterious circumstances.
That is just so weird.
Yeah, it's just a lot of weird
There
deaths.
has to be totally a group that's out there in the desert doing this.
I think it's more along the line. I think that's way more likely than an actual curse in this one, but we're still not done.
Oh my Lanta.
So not all the stories are true. I want to be clear on that. So a man named Arthur Mace was part of the excavation team, and it said in many places on the internet that he died of arsenic poisoning in 1928, making it seem like he was poisoned and suddenly died, you know? And that really got me excited on my, like, there's a group of people out there who are poisoning everyone or murdering everyone associated with this excavation. The truth is, he did die of arsenic poisoning, but it was neither sudden nor nefarious. He suffered from it since March 1924. So he knew it was happening. His health was deteriorating for the course of 4 years. He was hospitalized in like a hospice in the fall of 1927. He himself stated he believed the arsenic came from breathing in, quote, actually, this is a quote, swallowing too much sand and dust while digging in Egypt.
Wow.
Because he kept going into tombs and there was always like poor quality. They probably took canaries places with them and the canaries probably died. And at some place they thought like, oh yeah, it aired out, just go back in. He died on April 6, 1928. He was 54. So the internet sensationalizes that one, which is kind of annoying to me, but like he did die of arsenic poisoning. So it's like they're kind of telling you the truth, but they're just leaving out the fact that it was a slow, painful death for him that he knew was coming. So Does Arthur Mace's death really point towards a more logical conclusion, which would be that there really wasn't a curse, but it was simply a side effect because a lot of these workers that were hired to excavate this tomb were locals that they knew that had worked in the Valley of Kings before on previous excavations. And so they got them back into the fold and they're like, cool, we'll do this. This is good money. It's steady work.
Yeah.
But they're going back into these tombs that are extremely hazardous. In a lot of cases, if it was hazardous, they'd send in the locals and they wouldn't send in like the Brits or the Americans or the scientists that had decided to like go on this expedition in the first place. I mean, maybe. Like, some people did get sick and drop dead within days, which is bizarre. And some people still wound up murdered. Although that does kind of sound unrelated, like the guy who beat his wife that got shot to death, like, kind of fucking deserved it. That's all I'm saying. But maybe, like, you should decide based off of the guy who found the tomb and opened it and was the first one in, who dedicated his life to trying to find something like this. And that would be Howard Carter, Peggy Carter's husband. So...
Jesus.
He lived an additional 16 years after opening the tomb. He died on March 2nd, 1939, at the age of 64. And let's be real, if you lived through a time when people pulled out all of their teeth to cure blindness, 64 was pretty effing good, just saying. Cause of death for him, Hodgkin's lymphoma. He died of cancer. So, and it wasn't sudden. He knew he had it. He knew it was coming. But like King Tut, and I thought this was absolutely fascinating, Howard Carter has an inscription on his tomb as well.
Really?
I say tomb, but I really mean tombstone. And the quote reads, may your spirit live, may you spend millions of years, you who love Thebes, sitting with your face to the north wind, your eyes beholding happiness. And it's actually a quote from something written like within Tutankhamun's world.
Oh, okay.
Which is like kind of beautiful. Like, he dedicated his life to this. He found this amazing thing. And that's what his tombstone says.
I mean, they charge per letter, so...
Yeah, it's expensive shit.
Yeah.
And that's the thing, too. His plot has, like, an outline around it. I'm not talking about, like, a big sarcophagus. It's just kind of like a concrete border or a cement border. And that also has an inscription on it. And it says, O night, spread thy wings over me as the imperishable stars. So, like, I just think that he really was very happy with how his life turned out. And it sounds like a dude who, like, left a lot of things, like, finished. A lot of people say you leave things unfinished, but it's like he accomplished what he set out to do. It said that not a lot of people attended his funeral.
That's sad.
And when I read that, it made me sad. And then I realized that I could probably feel sad for everyone who's affected by the quote-unquote curse. So you think about it, like, was the curse real? Well, like, honestly, like, I don't know. Like, none of us will ever really know, you know? Like, it's a bunch of bizarre things that happen. But what I do know, beyond the shadow of a doubt, is today, right now, as I'm speaking, is July 8th, 2019. And I'm still talking about these people. So curse or not, that's pretty fucking cool. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
If your name echoes throughout history and you didn't do anything, like, horrible, like Hitler shit.
Oh my god.
Like, these people just opened a tomb and everyone's like, now you're cursed. And I think with stuff like
Big
this,
step forward for scientific discovery.
it was very, very important.
Yeah.
It sincerely was. Like, this guy was like the Egyptologist. Like, he's the one who brought so many people into like archaeology and exploring ancient cultures and stuff like that. And like, not just him, but he was very, very influential. It was a very pivotal discovery. It sincerely was. And I think with stuff like this, we definitely connect some dots that may connect for like the sake of the story. And lots of people sensationalize some details to make it more like cursey, like died of arsenic poisoning, where it's like, yeah, over the course of 4 years, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I mean, unless his wife was like one of those like secret members of society and she just poisoned him until he died. But when you think about this, like, it's totally not necessary to sensationalize this particular story, especially because like everything about it is absolutely fascinating. Like, these people found a tomb that was buried and lost for over 3,000 years. You know what I mean? Like, if I find socks that have been missing for 2 weeks, I'm like, fucking score.
Yeah.
Like, I'm just so proud of myself. And I think it's funny because, like, I think we'd all prefer to not be cursed, but some of these people were simply cursed by association. You know, like the benefactor's brothers got cursed and died, supposedly. So it's like, if that can happen, I might as well be out there adventuring, accidentally cursing my family instead of the other way around. Because if I get cursed by something I didn't even do, I'm going to be pretty pissed off. And like, that is my final thought on King Tut's tomb. Because it's like, if you can get cursed from not having anything to do with something, Like, just be the adventurer who discovers something amazing. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So it's just this really amazing story. And I could talk about this literally all night. And there's one takeaway, I put it as a PS, that I think is really important here. Howard Carter busted his ass for over 30 years looking for something that just about everyone told him, you're never going to find this. And the only person who believed in him was just someone who happened to have deep pockets, who could fund him and help him, and he did everything he could to find this stuff. And even that guy was like, look, we're pulling the plug after this one. This is the end of this shit. Like, your life is a failure. And he was just like, all right. And then he wound up finding King Tut's fucking tomb. Like, and if that is not the best example of like the night is darkest just before the dawn, like, I don't know what is. So don't let anyone ever tell you to give up. # keep digging. So that's how I'm going to end it.
Take some notes from Muse. Dig down.
I always thought that song was Dick Down, so I was so confused when we saw them live. And I was like, everyone's singing, oh, Dig Down. My bad. I thought the song was about boning.
Well, nice research. Good
you.
job. I hope you guys enjoyed this episode. I thought it was really fun. It's really interesting stuff from your side.
And yours as well.
Why, thank you. And we hope you folks enjoyed it and would love if you could support us if you head over to Ko-fi, ko-fi.com/scarishpodcast. Those are one-time donations, and those help us upgrade our studio setup as well as get a new computer for all our processing things that we need.
Right now, everything runs through my wonderful little laptop that's just been going for 3 years, and if this thing goes down, we're going to have some serious issues recording Scary-ish. Knock on wood. Let's hope that doesn't happen. This thing has been running so great for me. Shout out to Republic of Gamers laptops. Shout out to Asus. This thing is my lifeblood, man. So we're going to try and upgrade.
You got to take everything off onto a external or something.
I really do. Yeah. And like we just need to upgrade to something that is recoverable, so it's not like a disaster if something goes wrong. And plus, it's about time. I think the laptop's like 3 years old.
And then if you go to patreon.com/scarishpodcast, those are monthly donations, and we have a whole bunch of different tiers. It starts at $1. Right now, we have a cool promo going on our Patreon. So I have a discount code for our Teespring store that's exclusive to patrons. You get 10% off our Teespring store, as well as early access to our summer designs that we have going on. So there's 2 different designs for merch that you can get on our Teespring store. You can get 10% off that, as well as anything else you guys want to buy from the Teespring store. We have mugs, pillows, blankets, beach towels.
We have a bunch of stuff we really want but can't afford.
Yeah, we can't afford. But so if you're a patron, it's only $1. If you get 10% off of something, you're already saving a buttload.
Yeah, if you save more than $1, then I guess you just made money.
You just made money. So do we. Haha. But if you head over to patreon.com/scarishpodcast, please check that out. And it would really support us, keep this thing going. If you guys want to reach out to us with any of your personal stories, you can at
Storytime at scarish.com, or you can go to the website scarish.com. Facebook is facebook.com/scarishpodcast. Twitter is @scarishpod. And the Instagram is @scarishpodcast. If you go to scarish.com, click on Contact Us, fill out that form. It comes directly to us. You don't need to use your personal email. You can put it in there so we can get back to you and let you know that your story is going to be read online.
Yeah.
Or if we have any clarifications we need. But yeah, there's a bunch of ways to get to us.
Yeah, all our shop stuff is on there too. All our merch is on our store, scarish.com. And then there's a link to my Etsy store that has a little bit of extra stuff for Scarish that we have here. That's not like print to order type stuff. And lots of nerdy things. So if you want to check that out, it's on
If you would like
scarish.com.
to see us record the Storytime episodes live, you can go to twitch.tv/scarishpodcast or youtube.com/scarish every Wednesday, 6:30 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, which is the West Coast time. And you can just watch us record the Storytime live. It's fun because between stories, we talk to the listeners and the viewers and see what you folks thought and have this discussion. And like we give our initial impressions, and it's really fun to see what you folks think like in the moment. You know, it's a really good time. And then we do a game at the end where you can win like a little tiny piece of free merch. And it's super fun. And I think everyone that comes for the first time has a really fun time. So yeah. We hope to see you there Wednesday, 6:30 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, either on Twitch or on YouTube. So I think that's just about everything we have for episode 83.
Yeah.
So go ahead and sign us out.
Keep on creeping on, and we'll talk to you guys later.
Bye.